So Paulette, here we are again, and today we are going to talk about looking for sailboats and what we've been doing. So the first thing that I want to talk about is where we've been looking, what kind of listings and things like that. Any quick thoughts?
Yes, I think it's worthwhile spending a little time discussing what we think we might want to get. We originally started thinking, do we want to get a sailboat? Do we want to get a catamaran? How do we want to go about doing this? I think we quickly realized that sailboats made the most sense for us, given where we were and how much money we were willing to spend out of the gate for our initial foray into sailboats. So it's been a big education process for us. Cool being members of a sailing club for this first period of time while we learn how to sail, but we do want to have our own boat with our own settings, a bigger boat, and we definitely want a sailboat to sail on the ocean and not in lakes. So I would say Brian, much more than me, has been spending a ton of time really researching and trying to understand. And, we have a million questions as newbies into this, like,
And not $1 million?
And not $1 million, exactly. That's well said. So we have a lot of questions, like, how much does the new sailboat cost? How much does a used sailboat cost? Okay, pretty basic going into it. It's like, how often do you have to repair and replace things? Because that's all the additional costs that we could get into as well as it relates to maintenance. And because frankly, one impression I've been left with from YouTube videos watching other sailors is everything seems to break on these boats and go. And so I say to Brian sometimes, I think that, people are sort of trying to look for something to video and shoot, and they're always fixing things. Is everything always going and breaking? And I don't know. And Brian in particular is interested in maintenance around electronics and electronics equipment. So, we've been digging into a lot of these, and I think the first area that Brian, you started going to initially was a lot of the listing sites where boats are for sale with the purpose of trying to ground ourselves into kind of what we can get for our money, because like Brian said, we don't have $1 million. We're thinking maybe spending around the $100,000 mark for a used sailboat. We want to kind of see what we can get for that.
Right. So, for the money, I understand that when you buy a boat, it's either ready to go, everything is being done, or if it's a little bit of a fixer-upper, you're going to have to do some things. So how much money do you put aside if you need to do an initial refit? So I'm looking at, this is sailboatlistings.com. And obviously, a 45-foot Beneteau Oceanus, even a 6-year-old boat, 7-year-old boat, $349,000. That's a bit spendy.
That surprised me starting out. Like it really did surprise me. But then again, I really had no frame of reference. So I like this website because I can go around and kind of see for the different brand name boats and the lengths and the ages, roughly what it's going to cost us. So it kind of, keeps me in check a little.
Yeah. So, it comes down to, and a lot of these forums, they get into, a lot of name calling, plastic boats versus...
But this is not a forum, right?
No, this sailboatlistings.com is just, boats for sale.
Boats for sale. What about like the boats for sale site that you've got bookmarked there? Is that just like a listing as well or something else?
Well, this is Boat Trader, and there's also a Yacht World. And I think between Boat Trader and Yacht World, this is probably where, if you go to a broker, these are the boats that they're showing you, and it's like real estate where people get commissions versus, the sailboat by owner. That might be people just trying to sell their boats by themselves without, an agent.
And this is just like a classified ad site as well?
This is, I guess, more towards the Craigslist or the
eBay
or Facebook.
So on that point, I did go look at eBay just to see, and it's fine. There wasn't a whole lot there, a lot of power boats mostly. But up here on the classifieds, if you go to the Facebook, I joined a few Facebook groups just because some people suggested that might be a good place to go. And there are people selling boats there. Again, whole range of boats. Little tiny boats for $5,000 to, $500,000 and $600,000 boats. Again, this is one example. And okay, it's good. Again, it gives me a sense of what you can kind of get. But one thing that is really prevalent here is there is a lot of attitude and a lot of opinions from people. So I think that if you're hardy enough to list your boat to sell it yourself, be prepared to have a lot of naysayers critiquing and complaining and really digging into the boat's history and the detail. And I don't know if they have any intention of buying it, but the first few posts that I read, I actually got a little frightened about thinking, gosh, is this a big scam market here? Like are people trying to cover up problems with the keel and all sorts of incidents? And you really see that listed on Facebook and probably in some of the forums too. But there is a very, I would say, cynical, hardened group of people who really pride themselves, I guess, in their eagle eye about every detail. And to a newbie like me, it really causes me to worry, are we going to be ripped off here? Like, how do we prevent being ripped off?
Right. I mean, to me, it's like, where's the Carfax for that boat? And I get where people they're attached to their boats. Mm-hmm. And they really don't want to give their boat away if they've maintained it. I'm a lot like that with my cars. I don't want someone coming to me and, saying silly things. It's like, okay, so, there's always good tires on all of our cars. It's an OEM part. It's not, it's at the dealership. It's fixed right. I don't have problems with my cars. I do preventive maintenance. And that is what I'm looking for in a boat. I'm looking for people that, you hear the horror stories. Oh, I spent thousands of dollars. I'm thinking, but you don't do any maintenance. So that's what happens. You go in and to get something repaired and it costs you a fortune.
Cool. So what of some of the sites that we have up here, mm-hmm. what other ones are good forums where you learned a lot or you think other people would find helpful information?
There's websites like Practical Sailor. They get into reviews, and some of the older reviews, it's nice to read a review from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That was, what their impressions were for sailing. Because obviously there are different boats. I mean, some are more coastal cruisers or day sailors. Again, we're looking for a boat that can make the trip to Newfoundland and down the coast, down to Florida, to the Bahamas, to the Caribbean. We need a boat with a little bit of range. We're probably not going to be way offshore, but we are going to have to be going with the Gulf Stream. So
this is like a sailing publication, newsletter that's a sort of like a, not a bunch of armchair sailors or with people with uninformed opinions.
Right.
Okay.
It's when you get into some of these forums, like cruisers forums, there are lots of intelligent people on these forums, but they pretty much call it out to say there's a lot of armchair sailors on these forums and people that just say things they're bored. They want to start, an argument with somebody. Whereas there are other people looking to buy and sell and trade, mm-hmm. and it's a community. So it's the internet. It is what it is. There's lots of things to be learned here.
There's lots. And again, this speaks to, the amount of research and self-education mm-hmm. that we need to do. I guess if you're an experienced sailor and you've owned multiple boats, you can probably sift through this pretty quickly and know what you would care about and not care about.
Right.
To us, we're still trying to figure out are certain things important. And for example, Brian you've spent a lot of time looking at electronics, and how those systems work and don't work, and how to make sure you can update it and how long they last, because that's a big investment, and it's important. Like, whereas an experienced sailor might be, yeah, I don't care about that. That is just so minor in the scheme of things. Like, but we don't know what we don't know yet at this point in time. Again, it's a learning experience.
It is. There's Sail Magazine. There's a lot of very good articles. Along the way, you're going to hear a lot of articles about, how to dock, how to anchor, dealing with storms. So, YouTube is another great thing for that. When I really want to get into very specific boats, this would be the Catalina. So, for different models, they have different groups. And they talk about, repairing things. There's pictures. So you get an idea about the boat a little bit more, what it's all about, really.
So all of the different boats have like association sites. This is just the Catalina one, or most of the boats have them?
I think that Catalina seems to be a little bit more buttoned up. It seems to have a little bit more manufacturer support, easier to get parts. There's just a lot of Catalinas made in production. Hunters. When you get into Beneteaus, the Junos, the Bavarias, European companies, not so many, there's lots of them in the world, but maybe not so many of them here. Popular boats. To me, we've gone into this, what do we think we need? Maybe about 40 feet, something that, 2 cabins, separate shower, because we, don't need everything to be soaking wet. Able to have a fair bit of fuel, 80 to 100 gallons of diesel, lots of fresh water. So when we go looking at boats, and do we look for boats that already have all of these things, like a water maker, maybe a composting toilet, or different things, newer sails, standing rigging replaced within X years. So that really gets into how much money we're going to spend. Are we going to need to replace all the sails because this is a 20-year-old boat?
Yep.
Or has the previous owner looked after things? Are things covered up, or are they sun damaged?
It's almost like a rabbit hole. Like last week we were watching some videos, and it was just TMI. Like, it was just TMI for new people coming in. They were talking about things like the different kind of fiberglass, the weight of the fiberglass, the structure of how, whether the inside of the boat is built within it or is it brought in and attached, what causes creaking or non-creaking. Like technically, yes, all this is good and useful, but it's just TMI.
It's TMI for Paulette. For me, it's like, it's great. You want to talk about vinyl ester and polyester and epoxy resins? I get it. I've worked with those before. Do you want to talk about chopped string or mat and what weights of mat? Yeah, I get all that. I've worked with people that have,
I still think that you might be a couple of boats in before that is as meaningful as we try to understand what do we have to do with the electronic system. Right. Like how the keel is attached. Yeah, that's important.
Lead keel versus iron keel. Did they have any issues? Did the keel start to, did they have a smile where it separates from the hull? Yeah, I get all that stuff.
It's just definitely a lot to take in, and maybe my list of criteria, our criteria, isn't particularly deep to, again, a seasoned sailing person, but nothing will be better than us getting on the boats when we get through COVID, and we can get out there and start to actually get on the boats, look at them, have a feel, because right now looking at pictures, who the heck knows? Because again, people on the internet and all the forums are saying, don't trust the pictures. The pictures are old. They're putting pictures up from 5 years ago. Things may not be what they seem. So I think one of the morals of the story is you really need to go out, get on the boats, compare and contrast them, really see the boats to see if they are what they're being, purported to be. And, as we learn and as we start to see some of the boats, we'll definitely start to share that information out. But for me, at least, it's been a learning experience, just even learning how to sail. And so, Brian is still spending a lot of his time going deep, 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 deep into the boats and the composition and what's for sale. I have also spent a lot of time trying to learn how to sail. And, there are some really great sites, the Maryland School of Sailing, Carpe Diem out of British Columbia, Captain John, or Skipper John, isn't it? He's also great.
The Skipper Tips one, yeah.
Yeah, the Skipper Tips one. So that's great about learning to sail, but this is a lot to get underneath. So we have to learn how to sail. We have to learn how to navigate plotters, coastal sailing. Okay, we'll all start chipping away. So how deep do we go into the composition of a boat? So I am grateful that Brian is so research and wants to go so granular with it. But at some point in time, it will fundamentally come down to what kind of boat are you going to get for your budget range, and what things will you end up giving and taking up.